Hey everybody, welcome to the Michael Steele podcast. Guys, this is something really special for me because I started this podcast in 2018, and next week this version of my podcast will be coming to a close, at least for a little bit, as I shift my focus to hosting the weeknight with my friends Alicia Menendez and Simone Sanders Townsend on MSNBC. So to wrap up this podcast, I wanted to do something kind of special. As you guys know, I love the barbershop concept where you get a whole lot of folks in the room and y'all just talking and flapping and japping and having a good time. Well, I got some folks that I wanted to have a good time with over the next 2 weeks. And so I'm really excited about bringing on some of my favorite past guests for a big live stream barbershop wrap party to discuss current events. What could possibly go right? Right? Anyway, I'm joined by 4 guests today. Eugene Daniels, MSNBC senior Washington correspondent and co-host of MSNBC's The Weekend from 7 to 10 a.m. Eastern on Saturdays and Sunday mornings. Yeah, he up early. Rick Wilson will be joining us. His plane is landing and he's going to get in space with us. He's a Republican political strategist, ad maker, co-founder of the Lincoln Project, best-selling author, and host of both the Lincoln Project podcast and the Enemies List podcast. Like I said, he's going to be joining. Folks will be coming in and out today, so it's a lot of fun. My girl, my sister from Be More, April Ryan, the longest-serving Black White House correspondent in history, MSNBC political analyst, D.C. bureau chief for Black Press USA, host of the Tea with April Ryan, and the Contrarian. Yes, she is. Trust me, folks, this sister is contrarian. Dr. Jason Johnson, this is my boy. This one of the smartest brothers out there. He is professor the School of Global Journalism and Communication at the Morgan State University up in Baltimore. Political contributor at MSNBC. You see him hosting from time to time on a number of shows. And he's also on the Griot and host of the Slate podcast, A Word with Jason Johnson. So, folks, part 1 of our live stream barbershop rap party starts now. Eugene, April, Jason, welcome.
Hello. This is the barbershop. This is the salon.
We got to do an update, Michael, on my bio. So we'll recut it at the end, but we got to do an update. But that's fine.
Okay, we'll do it. We're going to do a quick script rip. Hey, guys, welcome. We've had a lot of fun over the last, I guess 7 years or so.
Many years
doing this podcast. And we've watched our politics in the country just largely go into the shitter. And all of you have brought not just your talent and insights, but I think an important perspective that I really want people, as we are into the second term of Trump, the complete disintegration of the MAGA, of the party is at the hands of MAGA, and the government at the hands of Doge and Elon Musk. You had this week, for example, this whole drama, the bullshit with Elon Musk is leaving the White House and he's stepping down. How different will it be? Bitch, it ain't gonna be different. He left all his servers and computers in place. He still got his people working there. What say you, Eugene? I don't know, man. You covered this stuff. I just drink on it.
You're right. No, you're 100% right. One of the things I think that Elon Musk has realized over the last few months is that it's actually better to be an outside advisor to Donald Trump than someone trying to work inside whatever system he's creating or destroying. Because at the end of the day, he's going to be able to call Trump when he wants. We're not going to know that, right? He's not going to have to go. He's not going to be up at the White House, and we're not going to be up in his face because he can hang out in Texas or California and just call up Donald Trump. And I think that's actually where more of the power is going to go. And I was talking to a Congress person over the weekend about this, about like, are you actually worried if he's gone, because he's actually made it easier for Democrats and the courts to fight back about some of the Doge stuff because he's so kind of clumsy with it, right? Like at one point he was in charge of it, then he's not. There's this woman in charge of it who none of us have ever heard or seen. And then, oh wait, he is in charge of it. He's always in front of the cameras. And that has given lots of fodder for Democrats to play with, both now and for the future midterms. And for lawyers who are coming against Doge to be able to point out the kinds of things that Elon says when he's being clumsy. That's not going to happen now. So it's a possibility that the kinds of things that Doge will, which as you said, will continue to operate, they're going to be able to do that quieter, right? We're going to see less of that. And that's something that I think like a lot of people who care about, the rule of law, due process, the way this country operates, can pay attention to little things like that.
The little things. April, you cover this. You're writing on this every day, and getting the perspective from inside the room where it happens. What do you walk away with?
Eugene is right. He's clumsy, but what I walk away with today, he's damaged. Elon Musk is very damaged. I mean, I'm just looking at just the optics away from the White House. Tesla dealerships, all of these anti-Tesla.
Yeah, down 71% for
the stocks. And I hadn't even gotten to the stocks, right? So now that Elon Musk has apparently left the building, no longer in the room where it happens, I'm now seeing in your fair state in Owings Mills, Maryland, the Tesla dealership on Ricerstown Road, they put the Tesla trucks back on the lawn so people can see. Because at one time, think about this, guys, people were pulling the Teslas down. He was crying foul because the Teslas, his vehicles were a symbol for the cuts, the hurt that many workers received. This is personal for a lot of people. And he took the big brunt that Donald Trump, he was the face of the cuts. Donald Trump wasn't. So Donald Trump wound up looking like the good guy and Elon Musk looking like the bad guy, but Donald Trump approved this. So Elon Musk walks away from this clumsy moment hurt. And let's see if he can regain his money and his standing. He looks like, I mean, think about this. If his son beat him up, what would the American public do?
His son smacked the shit out of him.
That's what he says. If his son punched, he walks it. Look, this is not myth or conjecture. He walked into the Oval Office and told the President of the United States, my son X hit me in the eye. I told him punch me. That's what he says. But
look, y'all, but okay. All y'all who believe that, please raise your hand.
Come on, y'all. Like,
Jason,
come on. Like,
Jason.
Look. I believe his son hit him the same way I believe certain other events that happened last summer, right? So we all know what I'm referring to. So anyway, look, I don't think I don't agree, right? Like Elon Musk is still rich. Okay, this is the laziest Ocean's 11 ever. He just walked out of the building with everything of value. Yeah. This man walked out of the building with all of our information. He is not leaving. He's just working remote. And everybody understands what that is since the pandemic. So whether he was making, I've never cared. You all know this. I say this all the time on the air and every outlet. I don't care about palace intrigue. I don't care about who's friends with who this week, who's going to lunch with this person, this, that, and the other. He is still the richest man on the planet. He has access to more data than any other. No man should have all that power, according to a certain rapper that's associated with this administration. And, the damage to his businesses is negligible because he's still the richest man on the planet. And this is like, to say that it's, yes, he didn't want the shame of Tesla kicking him off the board, right? They might have done that, like if it gets any worse. But to say, oh, well, he's lost his money, it's that old Chris Rock joke where he's like, if Bill Gates woke up tomorrow with my money, he commits suicide, right? Like Elon Musk losing 50% or 70% of the value of one particular aspect of his billions. So what? But
Jason,
5 states combined.
But Jason, you're right for normal people. But for people like Elon Musk, who have these humongous egos and so much of their value of who they are in the PR of it all, right?
That's right.
Is in the like people, the American people see me as neutral or like me, or they ignore me, right? Those things aren't happening anymore, right? And you even saw how he said, I'm not going to be giving as much money as I have. Because in his eyes, it is doing something to how people view him. And I think for someone like that, it does matter. It may, you're right, he's still the richest man in the world. So this is the tiniest violin I'm playing for him, right? To be very clear. But it does, is as little as I can get it. But it does do something to his own psyche, right? Because him saying, I'm stepping back, him coming out as small as it was, against the administration and this big, beautiful bill, right? It tells you that something did happen. Again, richest man in the world, no one feels bad for him.
Look at the confidence that he had at CPAC. If I'm on my back porch, if I can find a chainsaw, he was out there with that red.
Yeah, you got a wood backyard. You better cut down your whole damn back porch. You don't need no chainsaw. You good.
Come on over here. But no, think about this. That chainsaw moment, he was at the height of the ego, and he didn't care about the humanity of it all. I think about Valentine's Day, how he cut, and talking about the clumsiness that Eugene was talking about. Valentine's Day, he fired people at CDC, right? He's so clumsy. He fired them and left them with their key cards to get into the building, to get in the websites and all that thing. It could have been a disgruntled employee. But the bottom line is that ego has been crushed because he is the face of hurt. And that's going to follow him. In this moment, people don't forget. We remember, we play back those.
Yeah, but here's go ahead, Jason.
Here's my thing, though. I am not necessarily in disagreement, but to me, this is palace intrigue. I don't care if Elon Musk is sad. I don't care if he's not getting along with Trump, because what he's done policy-wise and what he's done, in PG County and Montgomery County, and the people who I know in Loudoun who are being told, you've got to move to Huntsville, Alabama in 6 weeks or you're going to lose your job at the FBI. That stuff is still going. So
that's
all of this to me is I don't care about his psychology. People still hurting out there.
But the thing about as well. But real quick, here's the thing though. He not only didn't get along with the president sometimes, he didn't get along with some of the cabinet members who were upset about the cuts. And it's about humanity and people hurting. And we're still watching. Look at what's going on at health. Look at what's going on in every department. People are hurting in labor, in housing, everywhere. Real people, Medicaid, Medicare. That's what I'm talking about.
I hear what you're saying, April. I'm a student of the good doctor, Professor Jason Johnson. I believe, aren't we all? I believe that this is his students, in my view, are some of the luckiest on the planet because they get an unvarnished, no bullshit view of stuff. And that, for me, is critically important in understanding the moment. Yeah. Elon Musk and Donald Trump have a player relationship. They play off of each other. And they consume what each other provides one to the other. In other words, you give me $250 million, I give you the keys to the government. Once you're inside the government, I need you to take out these departments, then you can grab all this personal data. It's all transactional. So this intrigue that everybody in the Washington press corps and elsewhere are sitting there like this is fucking Peyton Place, writing this story as if, it matters what Elon Musk is now doing, how his feelings are hurt, and how his 5-year-old bitch slapped the hell out of him, right? Okay, that I don't give a shit about. Yeah. What I care about, and Simone and I, especially Simone, has been emphasizing this for the last 4 or 5 days. What I care about is the fact that his Doge assholes are still inside our government. They still control servers. There are servers right now in the old executive office building on the White House grounds. There's servers in state. There's servers in commerce. There's servers in
Treasury.
Thank you, in Treasury. They're still grabbing our data.
Yeah.
He still has a direct line to the president.
What was that?
And he still has a direct line to the president.
Thank you. So what Jason is saying is exactly the point. It don't matter all this other stuff. What matters is, and what you need to pay attention to, is that this bitch is still getting your stuff. And the reality for every last one of the American people out there, especially y'all in red states, who sit there and think that somehow you're immune from this.
Oh my God.
Your data is less important than someone who lives in New York City. You think your information is less valuable than someone who lives in DC? Bitch, please.
The retribution list. You know what that is. It's
right.
a retribution list.
What are you talking about? So you've got him. So Elon Musk lost $100 billion in the last 6 months. Who cares? He clearly didn't. Why? Because what Jason said, he's still getting the bling on the back end.
But the people fought back. The people were upset. And I would say he's a casualty of sorts. It's still happening, but we the people showed something. They fought back in the only way they could. And most of the fights right now are in the courts, but they fought back against Elon, and he's a casualty right now. Let's say another fight. Target is a fight with this anti-DEI. I mean, Target is a casualty in this fight, this anti-DEI fight. They're losing money. It's a slow roll, but I believe in the people and what they're showing. They're like, you're not going to fire us. You're not going to do this without any cost to you. And he has been humbled to a point. I mean, yes, he still has, the palace intrigue and all of that, and they have the information, but the people are fighting back.
Well, and the people are fighting back.
I would argue to April's point, it's possible. None of us have it confirmed. Somebody might have fought back about a certain job that he took with him. But at the end of the day,
Jason is just laying down the slot.
At the end of the day, what did I say? I just said somebody might have fought back. Somebody might have fought back. But that might be the only visual evidence that we have. The rest are sort of economic arguments that are being made, which is real, right? Like people were going to be mad, people were going to sort of fight back one way or another. But I think I maintain that as Michael pointed out, you've still got all these minions with weird, tag handle names running things.
Big balls.
Yeah, exactly. Like you've got all these kinds of people still running around the government, and those are the people we know of. Right. We don't know who they've turned. We don't know what other kind of loyalists that they've got within the system. And it could easily take, and I say this from pure political scientists looking at the sort of advancement of authoritarian regimes, it could take easily at this point alone, a decade to purge all of those people out of every single aspect of our federal government. And that would require another administration that was serious about it, not just another centrist organization that's like, we can make peace with the people who work for an authoritarian regime. So that's already happened in 100 months, and that's his legacy.
That is such an important point. It is the part two. The part one is they still in the house, right, and they still stealing your shit. The part two is when you finally get to a point where you think you can start getting them out of the house, y'all know what that's going to take. That's going to take not just one, not two, but maybe 3, perhaps 4 administrations. Yeah. How do you rebuild when you have fired 250,000 federal workers, some in critical positions?
Well, because the damage is already done, Michael, and is what that's the point, right? The damage is done, and we had Jasmine Crockett on the show this past weekend, and she said, "Who the hell wants to work for the federal government now?" So now you have to think about, in the old just last year, federal jobs were jobs that you could be sure that you would continue to have one no matter who was
benefits.
In the house. There are all these benefits. It was used by people that look like us to pull themselves into the middle class, right? That has been the legacy of these jobs. And now you have this kind of there's a lack of surety for people who are thinking about these jobs. So the kinds of people, the caliber of people who are going to go and try to work in the federal government now, even if they hated Elon, right? Like those people it's going to be different. It's not going to be always the same. The people who believe that the government should work for the people and that that bureaucracy matters and these rules following matters, the lanes and the guardrails matter. It's not going to be those people all the time. It's going to be people who have been radicalized over the last, at that point, few years on how Donald Trump sees the federal government, on how Elon sees the federal government, how Doge changed the federal government. They have opened people's eyes. And then when you look at as the applications now, part of the application process is like, do you love MAGA, right? Essentially,
the loyalty
that's part of the questionnaire.
Yeah.
That changes the caliber of people that are getting into these jobs.
But let me say this. I mean, and Michael, I know you remember this. You were Mr. Maryland, okay? He was my lieutenant governor, and I still claim, I still hug him. But let me say this. In Maryland, I do. But in Maryland, I remember growing up, and my family said, I come from a very blue, white collar family, but many of them said, you want a good job, and they'd say a good government job with benefits. And in Maryland, especially in the Baltimore area, when Social Security opened up to Black people, remember that, Michael? When Social Security Administration opened up to Black people, everyone got a job there. Now they're all shuttering. I mean, later on in my life, in my teenage years, I lived 4 blocks from the Social Security Administration in Woodlawn, Maryland, and to see the Black folks in these federal jobs scared, quaking, and do I have a house? Trying to find another job, Ubering, Instacarting, doing whatever they can. It's a sin and a shame. I mean, and then to worry about if they've got insurance, to worry about if they can pay for their home, their car, send their kids to school. This is a time, there's so much uncertainty. And we are people who were brought up on, you do this and you live right and you go get a good government job, you're fine. That's not the case. That's not the America we were told that we could live in.
So I want to add to both what Eugene and April said. I had somebody ask me yesterday on my YouTube channel. So I'm now, I'm live streaming, as we all are, right? I'm doing myself on my YouTube. And I had somebody ask me a question about, Trump's upcoming birthday and this big military parade. And they're like, look, do you think that, our military is safe, that they'll listen to Trump and everything else like that? And what I pointed to, which April talks about with federal jobs, and Eugene's talking about as well, is I said, here's one thing about the American military as a government job that matters. I said, unlike many other places in the world, the American military is actually a competitive employer. Yeah. I said, there's a lot of places in the world where it's like, the military is kind of the only job you can get, right? If you have a low level of education, blah, blah, blah. I'm from some dust farm in central Kenya or a poor part of Mexico. I'm just going to take that military job. I said, in the United States, the military has to compete with Walmart, and they have to compete with CVS, and they have to compete with Verizon. I said, so it actually leads to us having a much more educated and career-oriented military than most of the rest of the world. Yeah. Which means that you have men and women, and I love pointing this out because a lot of people don't know this. I've been writing about this for years. 40% of the women in the U.S. Army are Black.
Yep.
I was like, it's the blackest federal agency quietly we've ever heard, right? Like, can you imagine if 40% of the women in the FBI were Black? Like, we have a whole different set of investigation happening in this country.
That's right? We'd be working faster, that's for sure.
Right? It'd be a very, very different kind of environment. Hair laid, missions done, everything. It'd be a TV series. So, but the point being, I said, for that reason, we have a much more educated and rule-oriented military than a lot of other countries, certainly in the second and third world. People go into the military and get college degrees to become more educated. So when they are deployed, it's like, actually, I don't think we're supposed to do that. Or I'm going to report on that because I got a degree, I have a job, I understand these kinds of things. So the long-term consequences of these kinds of cuts with things like Job Corps disappearing and everything else like that is the men and women in our agencies are also less educated about the law, about standards, about American democracy. So the long-term consequences is they are much more susceptible to charismatic dictatorship that just tells you what to do, right? I when I was in graduate school, I had in my class, the master's class I did at Chapel Hill before I got my doctorate, we had 3 people in our class who were all in the Air Force. They were getting master's degrees in political science to be in the Air Force, right? So you know that when they went back and were serving their country, it was like, actually Kierkegaard said, right? Like, like they had a perspective on service that wasn't just going to be some grunt who's like, hey, this is the only job I could get out of Tuscaloosa County, blah, blah, blah. So that is the real, again, I keep being future oriented, the dumbing down, the lack of quality people that our government will be able to attract, as Eugene was sort of talking about. That's going to be our long-term undoing. We need smart people to want to work in our federal government, and we lose them because the job is uncompetitive or the jobs aren't available. Our long-term ability to function as democracy is compromised.
Well, it's funny because when you said that, I was like, yeah, folks. So Keir is guarding what? What's he guarding? I don't understand. I'm so confused. So you've got the White House intrigue. You got those backdrops and those storylines going on. A lot of the BS associated with Trump and his lies every day. And then you have something that, as all of you talked about, the impact on people. Yeah. The one thing that has been impacting people more than anything else is the economy. It is the reason why Joe Biden, well, one of the reasons why Joe Biden, God bless him, is not back in the White House, because the price of eggs. And presumably now and a whole bunch of other stuff that a lot of people knew was going on, but no one wanted to talk about. Eugene used to look a little side eyes from time to time. He wouldn't say much, but he was like, y'all don't know. It's a little bit quiet over there in the White House for a reason.
Well, but you know what? And let's talk about this Biden thing real quick, because it really,
yeah, sure,
it really.
I got thoughts.
You got thoughts. I do too. So let me tell you, we are the only nation that knocks our elderly. They built this daggone country, right? I mean, think about, we have knocked our elderly and our military. What bothers me to this day is that John McCain is now scoffed at or laughed at. It makes me mad. That man could have left being a prisoner of war, but he stayed there. He was broken and bled for this country. We may not agree with his politics, but doggone it, we shouldn't be scoffing. And now we're scoffing at the elderly. Joe Biden, for all intents and purposes, lived his life to serve. We may not agree with him. I mean, he got older in front of our faces. Typically, when you have little gray hair, it's considered being wise, right? Now it's like throw him out with the bathwater. Trump falls asleep at the Vatican. Trump falls asleep everywhere. But, he's great, And then Ronald Reagan, I'm going to tell you, Ronald Reagan fell asleep in a Congressional Black Caucus meeting. And Congressman Ed Towns told me of New York. He's the one who replaced Shirley Chisholm. He said he never apologized. He slapped himself a couple of times. But yet Biden, I haven't heard about him falling asleep in a meeting. He may walk a little different, but he may walk a little different, and his speech may be slow. But I thought his mind was okay. And I mean, that's just me, and I probably get a lot of hate mail for it, but I don't care. I think.
Well, I'll
the
put
optics aren't good, but his mind is okay.
I'll take Joe Biden as he is right now
compared to this
over what's in the White House at this moment. And I sit back and I just ask people, I say, okay, so all this shit was going on with Joe Biden in the White House. They were hiding this and tucking that around the corner and wasn't saying this about that. Did y'all notice it? Did we have a policy that was announced on a Monday, refuted on a Tuesday, revised on Wednesday, reimagined on Thursday, talked down on Friday, put back on the shelf on Saturday, and resubmitted on Sunday? Did that happen? Did you get an infrastructure bill when the prior administration couldn't do it in 4 years and they had infrastructure week every day?
Week?
Did you get relief ultimately on the interest rates when the economy was hammered because of the supply chain mess coming out of COVID and the fact that we spent a lot of money and the economy got a little bit out of kilter, but it was refixed? He worked with the Fed, all right, as opposed to trying to demand the Fed do something like give up its independence. I mean, so I don't know what the hell people were living through.
He goes over to Saudi Arabia, and what does he do? He gets a whole bunch of deals on taxpayer dollars. And Caroline Levitt says, "Oh, the president is not reaping the benefits of this." But yet, when Obama and Michelle Obama went on that date night at Broadway. The world lost their mind. Nobody said anything about this. There is a hypocrisy in this nation.
Oh, there's a hypocrisy. But Jason, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. This is not about comparing Joe Biden to Donald Trump. Donald Trump is an authoritarian. He's never been competent. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to his voters. It never has mattered to his voters. And we have a lot of people in the mainstream press who always try to both sides this sort of thing. So that's already kind of a given. I will never, under any circumstances, forgive any member of that administration who hid this information from the public and endangered us all. I will never forgive any journalist who had this on record, who knew about it and decided they didn't want to say anything because they wanted to sell a book later. I have a serious problem with that ethically and professionally and every other way. If you knew that this man was incapable of doing this job and you hid it because you were more concerned about your legacy or your reputation or anything else like that, you endangered the entire country.
So
and the very same people—
You're talking about Anita Dunn.
The very same people who are covering for Joe Biden's diminished capacity, if this is the case— the very same people who were covering for Joe Biden's diminished capacity, if this is the case, were also the people leaking bad stories about Kamala in 2023 because they wanted to make sure that she was not an alternative option.
Not just 2023, Mr. Johnson, Professor Johnson, not just 2023, sir. To be very clear, I will say this. I think the thing that has been really interesting as this book has come out and this conversation has kind of restarted. One, terrible cover up because we all saw the man getting old and that's one thing. But the other thing is when to the point of that Donald Trump's the MAGA base, the people that voted for him don't care. Democrats do. And that's where the fight is, right? Yeah. It's because Democrats do care that you that you don't keep big secrets about these kinds of things. Now, if you read the book, I have a couple of times because we have them on the show. If you read the book, if you talk to people, if you do your own reporting, no one up until this point has been able to say there was a decision that Joe Biden should have, could have, didn't make because he was like drooling in a meeting. Right?
That part. Okay.
Thank you.
It does say something, and it's about the folks around him because Joe Biden is done with politics. He's not going to run for president again. He ain't running for city council or dog catcher, right? Like he is going to be in Delaware, hang out with his wife and his grandchildren and live his life. But the folks around him that Jason's talking about that, and then the April keeps throwing out a name.
I did, Anita Dunn. She had no right letting him go do that debate. She had no, it was her. They saw a different reality than what was in front of them.
Because they were what they were trying to do, and this is what gets lost from this conversation and the intrigue, is protecting power, both their own and his, right? If you are working for someone for 40 years, 30 years, 20 years, you should be able to, and you should, especially if you're a public servant, tell them, sir, maybe we don't run for president. Maybe we don't do this. Maybe we don't do that. And I think that is when
they put him on that debate.
They did not. What their issue, and the Democrats, their larger issue, is that the folks around him who will probably still be making money in Democratic politics for a few more years, right? They're still going to be getting hired. They're still going to get speaking fees. The issue is that they weren't always honest with him because of the way they like. If you're working for a principal, if they don't want to hear it, you should force them to hear it. Michael still knows this better than all of us on here, right? The people that worked for you, if they were the chief of staff, the comms director, your campaign manager, if you were having issues and they're saying, sir, maybe this is a bad idea, even if you get pissed, they should hear the idea.
It was the emperor
somebody in that building, to Eugene's point, somebody in that building, it's like telling an old striker, it's like telling a pitcher, it's like telling a quarterback, bro, you've done a good job.
Taking the keys from grandpa.
Right.
We've all had to do it.
Exactly. It's like, grandpa, we love you. No grill this year, right? Like you too old to work grill. And had somebody come to him, had they had a meeting after 2022 midterms and said, what you need to do is during your State of the Union of 2023, say, remember when I told you I was just going to be a transitional president? I meant it. And had he said at the State of the Union in 2023, and there's two ways to say this stuff. Obviously, we've all thought about this. You say, hey, I'm transitional, I'm not running again. And then you say, and people would have been mad, but it's understandable, I am also not endorsing anyone, because while I chose Harris as my vice president, I think it should be up to the American people or the Democratic primary voters to make their decision going forward, and then just have a freaking primary. I think had he done that in 2023, we might, I don't know.
Well, it wouldn't have been
we
an
might have had a different result in 2024.
Yeah, I agree with Jason on this. Again, a student of Jason Johnson. I think he's absolutely right. I mean, I've said during the time in a number of conversations that we had, Republicans like myself and Rick Wilson will be joining us a little bit later. And Rick is one of those Republicans having these conversations, trying to figure out, how to navigate the space. And one of them was, so what that moment, to Jason's point, should have occurred at that State of the Union or immediately after that State of the Union. Even if they didn't do it the way Jason just described, but then on the heels of that, there should have been a committee of principals who went to the White House and said, Mr. President,
Nancy Pelosi.
And here's the rub. For Nancy Pelosi and a Barack Obama on the back end to sort of slip and slide away, and to try to, in the view of a lot of people, certainly a lot of Democratic voters, undermine the president the way they did. That was just bad form. It was bad politics. I mean, who's advising you? I mean, in what world do you think you rationally can get away with that and not have Joe Biden, who is an Irishman to his core, when you back him into a corner like that, what is he going to do? He's going to lock and load. He's going to lock in. He's not going to move. He's not going to make it easier. But that process was aborted, if it was even considered, for whatever. I think to Eugene's point, because there's a lot of Skrilla to be made if the campaign goes on. The second piece that Jason raises up, which is probably the driver, in my view, at the end of the day, was the driver. Y'all familiar with The Sound of Music and that famous song, What Do You Do with a Problem Like Maria?
What do you do?
What do you do with the problem like Kamala?
Oh, God.
Mm-hmm.
They did not know what to do with her.
Exactly.
And they did not want to do what they should have done with her.
Mm-hmm.
And
so
that whole piece drove everything. It's a reason why no one went down to the White House. It's a reason why this storyline played out. And when Joe Biden, go back to the Sunday when he got out of the race. And the 3 hours, because we were on the air at the time.
Yes, we were on that show because we had the head of the DNC, and he was like, Joe Biden's not stepping out of the race. And we were all on set together. And then 2 hours later,
this is part of the problem with that insular group that was in the White House, right? Is because, and the reason that Democrats in leadership are so pissed is because literally, like in Playbook that day, in the newsletter, we had talked to a woman, a member of Congress, who said to us, he is never dropping out. Y'all are crazy. And then like literally an hour after Playbook comes out, and they weren't talking to people because they were insular, right? So and I'll never forget that someone said to me recently, who was on the campaign with Biden and Harris, I always had to pretend that he didn't think he was old, so I had to pretend he wasn't old. And to the vice president of it all, from the very beginning, there were people in the administration who were high up, who were saying things on background to us, who were sent to us to say nice things about her, right? We all know you're writing a story that's a little critical, and then the White House or the whoever sends people you to talk to folks to kind of tamp down the story. They weren't doing that. Or they were starting the story, or the issue, or they would only talk about her to a fault. They'd be like, she is always lockstep with the president, right? But what does she bring to the table, right? That's the question. Like, why? And they wouldn't say because they didn't believe in her. And I think like one of the things that's a huge mistake. One of the things that's a huge mistake on behalf of some of the folks in that White House is that if you have a president who, whether he was going to do 4 or 8 years, at some point, this woman was going to run for president. She is the perfect embodiment of his legacy, could have been the perfect embodiment of his legacy and what he had done. She could be the perfect, bellower of the things that Joe Biden did as president if you had supported her from the very beginning, right? There's always a push and pull with vice presidents and president's team. There's always a tension there, right?
Yeah.
You talk to any chief of staff from Al Gore and Clinton. There's
Easy
always
being number two.
There's always a tension there. So some people know.
Al Gore looked at Clinton as his co-worker. And when he left Clinton off of that ticket, that thing went sour. And we know that. And then we know that Cheney and Bush had a problem because Cheney was considered the one who was leading everything that went down, talking about the wars and stuff. But let me say this to you. I want everybody out here to get old and see what it feels like to be old. You can still have your mind and get old. I don't like this discussion of old, but let's get to this piece. They never, let me tell you, there were a lot of people in that White House who were mad with Kamala and never got over it after she was on that campaign trail when she
the first lady. The first lady never got over it.
Okay, now he's calling names now too.
Look, that's public. That's public.
It's public for some. But anyway,
for the record, that's public.
It's public for some. But so there are people who never got over that. And there are a lot of people in that White House. Eugene was getting those stories and publishing them left and right in Politico because people were mad at her. And it was the emperor with the new clothes. That was not a White House that was together at all. They had their eye off the ball. They were going after Karine, going after Kamala, going after a whole bunch of people when they should have been focused on the president and realizing that man could not go out there.
So where does this...
Wait, hold on. Let me finish. Let me
go ahead.
And then on top of that, some of the issues that he tried to deal with in the campaign, policing, so a lot of domestic issues that they wanted to deal with, Anita Dunn said no. Anita Dunn said no. It wasn't him saying no because she felt it wasn't the time. He had the people around him that did not support him to help him look favorable. And they were going after people just because they could. And then now they got called out. None of these people are getting jobs. They're not on the speaking circuit because people don't want to hear from them. Biden is over. Okay. Let's deal. A lot of those people can't even get jobs now because of how it's been played out. And how it's this MAGA, and they've even blackballed a lot of these people. So if we're gonna be real, let's be real about this whole thing.
I will also add,
Baltimore real.
And I will also add, because I think this is important politically moving forward, which is, again, I want to be sort of forward thinking about consequences, but not talking about elections, because I think it's insane to talk about 2026 or 2028 at this point. Yeah. But we have to, of course, recognize the past in order to understand the future. He never wanted to pick her, right? So let's be clear about that. He never wanted to pick her. He made a decision based on the counsel of somebody that we all know. And that always had an impact. So when you see people who are partnered in unnatural ways, there tends to be tension. The ability of those in the White House who did not like Vice President Harris to do what they did stemmed from the fact that he was never overly enthusiastic about the selection to begin with. And he had a bunch of different
after that busing thing, after the busing thing, but to his core about that, he told me.
But quite frankly, and I think, again, this is important moving forward as we look at people like Tim Walz and we look at people like Wes Moore, because what Democrats are hopefully going to learn how to do as a party in opposition under an increasingly authoritarian regime is stop all this BS triangulating and operate out of your gut. Because what they did and what Joe Biden did at the time is he sort of leaked this idea that he was going to pick a black woman as his vice president, which limited his options to about 4 people at the time.
From here to here.
I mean, which was just bonkers for him to do, because you basically at that point, all you had was Susan Rice, Val Demings, Stacey Abrams had she won the governorship, right? And Kamala Harris. That's not a particularly wide swath of people to be choosing from. So he already locked himself in.
Karen Bass, they were in the list.
Keisha Lance Bottoms was never an option.
Yes, she was. Yes, she was, because he called her.
I lived in Atlanta. The stories that would have come out about how that mayor
told her that night that he didn't pick her.
Anyway, well,
what I will say is the Democrats moving forward, and I say this as someone who is a Maryland resident and has seen what happened recently with a certain bill about reparations. That's the kind of thinking, right, that we saw Joe Biden engaging in when he picked Kamala Harris. I'm trying to triangulate in all of these ways based on ethnicity as opposed to ideology and as opposed to what people actually want to see. If you want to be a party in opposition that is functional, you have to operate on your gut. The American people have no more faith in policy. The American people are diversified and bifurcated in ways that seem to cross race, gender, sexuality. There are people out, and forgive me, but this is an important rant moving forward. There are people out there who were COVID skeptics who will fight you on gay marriage, right? Who will also say, I should have universal basic income. You can't appeal to those people the way that you used to 10, 12 years ago.
That's true.
You've got to be committed to, like, this is my vision for America, and I'm going to sell it to you. And it doesn't necessarily matter, and I'm the last person to say this, but it doesn't necessarily matter as much what color is the person making that argument, but it's their ability to prove that it'll work for people.
No,
and
the
that's
color
the
does
mistake
make
that's the mistake they made with
the
Harris.
color
And that's the
matters
mistake a lot of Democrats are making going forward.
Jason, I love you dearly. The color matters today. The color matters more now.
Well, it does, but to Jason's point, it doesn't, because I think we're going to find this soon enough in the 26 cycle. And certainly in the 28 cycle. I think you're going to find it soon enough that there is a backwash from all of the anti-DEI bullshit where color now has become a neutralized thing. So people are going to focus less on it. Let's put it this way. White folks are going to focus less on it. There will be people of color who will still, for a whole host of different reasons.
Where are these people with white masks marching in the street? Looking like KKKs. I mean, where are you talking about? Because
but what I'm saying, but I think to Jason's point, though, I think that's a value. That's going to be an important sort of consequence of all of this.
A lot of these people who voted for Donald Trump said, "Oh, it's going to be them, not us," and now they're touched too. Race is always going to play a factor. Race and money hit everything, particularly now. I'm sorry,
but here's the thing. To what I think. Please forgive me, Michael, but also to your point, April. Trump's success in part in 2024 was his ability to galvanize infrequent voters and men of all races under the age of 35.
That's right.
So what we're seeing is there are certain ideologies. Now we could argue it's misogyny, but there are certain ideologies that are crossing race, that are allowing large numbers of Latinos and a louder group of young Black men to be supportive of this policy. I don't think that only works one way. I do think you've got some people out there who, if you give them a vision, not just policy, but if you give them a vision and a policy, a vision of this is what we're going to do, and I'm going to drag you with me, I think that can cross race in ways that we haven't seen before. And I am as much a race man as the next person, right? But I can't ignore the numbers, and I can't ignore the success that Trump has been able to have, because it's very similar to what Obama did. Obama got people of all colors under the age of 40 to be like, I'll do this, because he pushed forward a vision of America that was appealing. We're talking about white suburban women now. What were they when Obama? They were white college girls, right? He got who have turned into white suburban women, right? So you can come up with things that cross race, gender, and sexuality, but you got to be passionate about it. And what you can't do is sit there and do interview after interview where you're like, hey, what are you going to do about the fact that members of your own party are being arrested or trapped in their own offices? And you can't say, I'm going to send another strongly worded letter.
Jason, you have to lead. You have to lead. That is what he's talking about. Because I think one of the things that is frustrating as a reporter is like you're talking to folks and you're trying to pull out of them what you know is there, right? A lot of these people do have central cores of like policy prescriptions. They care about things in a certain way. They have a vision for things, but because of the way they feel like the incentives to be honest about that aren't there. And I think what we found out from 2020, what Donald Trump has taught us is that the incentive for even Democrats to say what they mean and how they mean it is there, right? Like it is there. There's a benefit. There's an electoral benefit to being blunt, because the way that social media has changed the
So
way.
why aren't they?
Because they're scared.
They haven't figured it out yet. They're scared. They don't know how to operate as an They're trying to operate both as an opposition party, and they should be operating as an alternative, right? That is a different way of thinking. You can sit out there and you can go on interviews. You can come on our show. Please do. You come on our show and say whatever you want about Donald Trump. But when we ask you, what do you want to do? And you just say like the opposite of Trump, that doesn't tell people anything, right? When I hosted one of the debates for the DNC chair, and Politico did like all of the whole day, and I did I did the chair one. And I asked all of them, all 8 or 9 of them, whatever, on the stage, I said, for whatever amount of years, your party has been defined by Donald Trump. What do you think it means to be a Democrat? Platitude, 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 platitude. That's what we got. And I think, and then you talk to them after, off the record, it sounds a little different. And it's really
well, and it's interesting because we had Maryland Congressman Jamie Raskin on the weeknight, 7 p.m. weeknights on MSNBC. We had Jamie on last night, and the consensus among Alicia, Simone, and myself was there is, and I think this goes to your point, Eugene, a small pocket of Democrats who understand the concept of the word fight. And they are out here fighting in large measures on 2 fronts. One, against MAGA, right? Just try, to your point, sort of level up an alternative perspective, policy point of view. And 2, within the Democratic National Committee or the party itself, as witnessed by all the drama with Mr. Hogg as the vice chair, and the fact that he leveled up, in my view, a very legitimate thing. Hey, there are folks who we need to think about whether or not they should be the standard bearer on the ballot. I had to do that in 2010. My hand was forced in many ways by the Tea Party, which started taking out a lot of good Republicans like Mike Castle in Delaware. So I had to stem that tide. I wasn't going to fight them tooth and nail over what was coming from the grassroots of the party. Yes, and he's a party official. I get that. But he still has a phalanx of young voters behind him who are energized by the fact that he's fighting. Jamie Raskins is another one who's fighting. So to your point, what does that look like for Democrats as they get ready for this cycle? Because Republicans are sitting back going, they can't do it. They don't know how. They figured out how to outmaneuver them at every turn, April.
So Republicans know that they are in the majority everywhere. They got all 3 branches of government, and they know that they can do whatever they want. And right now, everybody's saying, hey, Democrats know we're suckered. We can't do anything because we're not in control. But here's the problem. Democrats need to take a hold of these moments. We've had little moments here and there. They're not consistent enough. We've had Al Green, we've had Jasmine Crockett, and we've had Cory Booker. Now it's like, okay,
that's the congressman, not the singer, y'all. Just
to be clear.
Which one you talking about?
Al Green.
Al Green.
I believe that is a generational statement. There are many.
Happiness.
just saying.
Yes, love and happiness. Yes. Anyway, and I just saw something. It was like this day in history with Al Green. But if you're old enough, you know what that was about. Yeah, Michael knows. Anyway, moving on. So, no, but I mean, they're not jumping on these moments. People are questioning, where is Hakeem Jeffries? People are questioning, where is everyone? Why aren't they talking? And it's almost like I'm thinking about that day, going back, and I hate to go back since that day that Joe Biden decided to walk away from running for office again, from a reelection bid. I was in New York at a church, and Hakeem Jeffries, Greg Meeks, Yvette Clarke, Tish James, all of them, The heavy hitters in politics were there. They all got quiet because they were trying to figure out what was going on. And it reminds, because they didn't know, they were on phone calls talking to people. And it reminds me of that moment. What's going on? We all got to figure it out. And we are way deep. How many weeks are we in? How many months? We way deep. And they're still trying to figure out when people losing their jobs.
So to that point,
what you just said is a perfect encapsulation of the problem that the party's
well,
dealing
thank
with.
you.
Too many phone calls to the people that work for them to figure out what they want to say. Right?
Look,
Like
Eugene has shown and tell too many phone calls.
Too many meetings about like what they want to say instead of just saying it. You feel it, say it. That's why people like Jasmine Crockett.
People like Jasmine Crockett, because she's saying what she's leading from the chest.
Well, speaking of saying it, we are joined by my buddy Rick Wilson, who's fresh off a plane that got a little bit delayed.
It's a little plane.
Literally a plane he was obviously flying.
He was flying the plane behind you, folks. And
sometimes air traffic does not cooperate with the little guys, but here we are.
Hey Rick, I'm just trying to figure out. So when you have a delay, it's your fault.
I could blame FAA staffing shortages today. Maybe.
Well, listen, Rick, I'm gonna let you take my seat at the salon barbershop because I got to run to the White House. So, I don't have that hair that Eugene has, where he does some sacred and some what's his name, Taraji P. Henson stuff in the hair. But I gotta go. And Jason, I don't know, what do we do for you? Look,
I just think that for all the barbershops I've grown up in, when a white bald guy shows up in my barbershop, it has gone from the hood plays to sports clips. I don't know white dudes who've ever been in any of the barbershops that I go to, even if they wanted racing stripes back in the 90s. So no one's selling DVDs in the back anymore.
I know April's got to roll to the White House. April, thank you for being live with us.
Thank
so
you guys.
appreciate you.
Fun. It was so much fun.
Rick, hey baby, you got a wig. Put it on because you can.
No, man. I was born this way, so here we are.
So Rick, we were talking about the Democrats, and we had a really good session on the Biden White House, and we did have a question that I want to put on the table from the viewers. We're going to open it up to our viewers in a moment for some of their questions. But we're talking about the Democrats right now, and what is the problem they're having turning what they're doing into an actual fight on behalf of the American people, as opposed to sort of trying to wade through talking points and get the right tone and all of that. And so what are your thoughts on what you see coming out of the Democratic Party right now in the face of what has been an incredibly strong wall with Project 2025 as the cement being built by MAGA and Trump?
Well, as I was coming in, it was in the waiting room come on, Eugene was making a really, really, really smart point. And that was, it seems like the Democrats spend a lot of time talking to each other in the consulting world of Democrats and the party committees, the D-Trip and the Senate committee. They spend a lot of time talking internally like, oh my God, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? When sometimes you just have to go out and talk to America, and you have to speak English. You have to speak to America, not in sophisticated DC PowerPoint slide decks or $20 million studies on how to talk to men. Sometimes you just go out and say, hey, we know you have a problem with us. How can we work on this together? What can we do better? What's making your life hard right now? What can we do to help fix that? And to assert as Democrats that that you're the party that's going to help working people, that you're the party that gives a damn, that you're the party that is going to fight. Because part of what has drawn a lot of young male voters to MAGA, and including young African American men, not as many as people think, but enough, and young Hispanic men, is the sense that at least Republicans fight. At least they go out and they say what they believe, even if it's shitty and wrong. They go out and they say it, And I think Democrats need to assert things and say things more aggressively about what they believe and not try to make it acceptable to every single person in the party. Don't try to sand all the edges off of everything. Go out and show some fight. And until they do, I think they're going to end up with this like consultant muddle that they're in right now.
But this is why those town halls are breaking through, right? This is why Democrats going to those red districts, going to Florida, or wherever, where Republicans aren't doing them. That's why it's breaking through. But the thing is, it's not enough Democrats doing that. At some point, what should have happened is that those aren't that interesting because the whole damn party's doing it. They're doing it in there, and it's coordinated, right? Like it's not just Chris Murphy and Maxwell Frost deciding that they're going to team up and go. It's not just Jasmine Crockett heading to Florida. It is coordinated. Right. The leadership of the party. We were going to flood the zone, as Steve Bannon and Trump like to say, and we were going to throw everybody out there because that is going to show that instead of trying to let other people let the members of Congress do it themselves. Fund it, send people out, talk about it all the damn time. They should go on every show all the time saying, here are all the ones we went through today. Every Sunday, you should have Hakeem Jeffries on an Instagram Live with the whiteboard like this one my husband have and say, this is where we were here, this is what we learned, this is what we had here, this is what we learned. Because that tells the American people you're listening, you're ready to fight, and you're ready to step up if and when you get the majority.
To Rick's point, and it's something that I literally alluded to in the last second, I think there is an over-indexing in conversations about where are the men. I do think some of that is a problem at times, but I do think at the same time that the Democratic Party fails to put men who can fight and are seen as fighting across all sections in positions of promise, right? Look, there's all sorts of great things about how, Hakeem Jeffries, but if I see another one of those videos where his, where Brooklyn at energy, and I'm like, yes, where is Brooklyn? Because I'm not getting it from you, right? Like I'm not like, I'm sorry. He's got the hat on and it's giving me the Steve Buscemi meme, hey, fellow kids.
Hello, fellow kids.
Yeah, it doesn't give me that energy. And here's the thing. I think Hakeem Jeffries is a perfectly competent leader, but the energy does not come across. There has to be a guy version of Jasmine Crockett. There has to be, and I point this out because I've said this in Los Angeles. It happened a couple months ago. I went to the rally with Bernie Sanders and AOC, right? And I pointed out, as unpopular as it may have been, I'm not a drone, okay? But I'm in downtown Los Angeles. I counted the number of Black people that I saw there, and there weren't many, okay? And as great as AOC can be, you have to have a Gen X millennial guy out there, somebody who's Beto O'Rourke with more substance. And until you get that, and this is not to diminish Jasmine Crockett or AOC or any of these people who are fantastic, but you have to have a diversity of messaging, right?
We've got
the Republicans have Marjorie Taylor Greene and they had JD Vance. They had lots of different kinds of people, and there's not, and maybe it'll be Ruben Gallego, I don't know, but there is not a millennial Gen X Latino man out there talking. There's not a millennial Gen X Zoomer Black man out there talking to anybody. All they've got is Pete Buttigieg. And while I think
I will say Eric Swalwell's been out there a good bit, Eric
Swalwell look. I
get it. I get it.
I mean, a lot, but he doesn't hit my students at Morgan.
Right. No, what I'm saying, but we've got to. This is a big boat, and we've all got to pull an oar.
Yeah.
We've all got to get. It's like instead of talking about diversity, it's to show that there are all these people that give a damn about saving the country.
Yeah.
Instead of like having it as looking like a policy, show it as an action.
Yeah.
Where all these folks from around and honestly, I think there's an opportunity here for left, center, and center right to all work in the same direction. That's what we try to do at Lincoln, is to try to, in the absence of any single party in the country that is going to represent, the totality, you've got to patch it together with different people and different flavors and styles. But we do need more millennial Hispanic men and Gen X Hispanic men and Gen X and millennial and even Zoomer. And Maxwell Frost in the Zoomer category is like, straight tens. The guy's he's an amazing performer, and he's really doing the work. But we've got to get that all. We've got to get everybody pulling in the same direction, because there's one thing about the Republican Party that Michael and I grew up in. You learn 2 lessons: just win and stay on message. And if you don't have those 2 lessons,
complicated.
It's pretty simple, pretty easy checklist.
Y'all may have hated my ass in 2010, but you can't hate the game, baby. I played it.
Nope, you did.
My money and got my message. But here's the thing: to everything that's been said. So I had an offline conversation a couple of days ago, and it really is in the wheelhouse of what Jason has put on the table subtly. And that is when the Democrats take the House next year. This is how the conversation went. When the Democrats take the House next year, should Hakeem really be the speaker?
I will say this.
Now that wasn't me positing the question.
Yeah, be clear, Mr. Steele. Be clear, Mr. Chairman, for the people come for you. I will say this. I think that I don't see Democrats getting rid of Hakeem Jeffries in any way, shape, or form. I think they have already laid out the groundwork of him being the first Black speaker. All of that work is there. I think there's no way. I will say, though, there are members of Congress I have talked to that are Hakeem Jeffries fans. They love this guy, right? Like, they like him. They have been friends with him. They really love him. They're supportive of him. But their issue is that he has this saying, and I'm going to get it wrong, but it's like the will of the caucus will out. Basically, like letting the caucus figure it out, right? Like, instead of being the Nancy Pelosi, leader who's like, this is what we're doing. If you can't vote on it, I'll figure out what we're going to do with you. I'm going to pull your arm over here. Here's what I'm going to give you for the next time. Right? That's what I think people are so used to, the Nancy Pelosi operation, that this feels it's just such a difference, right? They're looking for Hakeem Jeffries to say, this is what we're doing.
Well, that's where this conversation was going, Eugene. That's actually where it was coming from. Someone, again, who is Hakeem. Look, I don't have a dog in that fight. I'm not a Democrat. I don't get a vote. I have no say. I have some thoughts about it. But I thought this member raised an important question. And the other side to the story was, maybe we were, again, them saying this, maybe we were a little premature in assuming what the leadership should look like given the fight in front of us. Because I think there was an expectation, at least what I gathered from the conversation, that there was more fight than we've seen. I told him, I knew there was no fight the day he handed over the gavel to Mike Johnson. And he said, quote, now we lay down our plowshares, our swords, and pick up our bipartisan plowshares. I'm like, bitch, do you know who you have?
Have you met Mike Johnson?
Look,
I think, as Michael said, I'm not a Democrat. I don't get a vote in this thing. But I do think the question is, as you go into the second 2 years of the Trump term, where at the end, I think it will get more dangerous, not less. You want a wartime consigliere. You want a hard fighter. Now, you don't know what Hakeem's going to do when he's got a majority. But I mean, I do know one thing we can all agree on is that sternly worded letters from Chuck Schumer have not helped in the Senate leadership in any capacity whatsoever.
No.
They're not going to
leadership, Rick.
Look, I need, as a voter, right? Because there's a difference between, all of us create content and do analysis, but I will tell you what I need as a voter. I need some say it to my face energy, right? Yeah. And you don't get that from any of these people. You don't get if I've got coworkers, and it's funny, I know I'm gonna mischaracterize it, but Michael Harriet said this a while back with Al Green, right? He said, look, if we all at the club together and I get thrown out and y'all stay, we ain't crew no more. Right.
Right.
If you have a friend,
why the hell you ain't leave when I got kicked out?
Thank you.
I got
it's
drug
like,
on my neck. You still sitting in the club dancing.
Thank you. Your friends are like, but I just ordered my drink. Then those aren't your friends.
They're not your friends, baby.
So we've seen what this party is about. We've seen it. So all the conversations about, well, should he be the leader? Look, he probably will be. Like I said, I don't really talk about 2026. We have seen the mettle of this party, and it has been found lacking. And yes, I'm using sort of the funny metaphor, but that's the energy that people see. That's the metaphor to people. Everybody understands that those aren't really your friends if they don't leave with you. And the American people see that, and they're like, well, if they can't be down for each other, if they're seeing their colleagues get arrested and they're like, we're going to send another strongly worded letter, then I know they're not fighting for me.
Right. Jason, that is the difference between the D and the R. Yep. The R, they're going to be down. Using the club analogy, if Donald Trump get kicked out of the club, the whole crew is leaving.
But they burning the club down. The club
that's it. Right. They come back and they burn that shit down.
The next day. It's rubble.
It's over.
They burn it down.
And to your point about Al Green, one of the things that a lot of Democrats I talked to, even members of Congress and their staffs, were that as they were going into that, this was the biggest moment they were going to have this year to say how they felt about Donald Trump. There was no leadership on what they should do. Some of them had that little, the little lie or whatever the like church the fan thing was. You have Al Green. Some people were standing up. It was just like all over the place. And so it looked.
Wait a minute, but hold up, Eugene, hold up. You mean to tell me, okay, I'm sure that was a spontaneous moment for Congressman Green, all right? Or maybe he thought at a point, if the moment's right, I'm going to do this. Mm-hmm. But you mean to tell me that no one kind of figured that out in the moment, that even if that was spontaneous, that in the moment, given the way that unfolded, that there was nothing that moved within the Democratic body sitting there?
You saw them saying they didn't know what the
hell about your seat. You doing what? No. We standing with. No one thought that.
They said that because this is a party that is still frozen in fear, and I think they're like some people said.
What are you afraid of?
Some people said they want to stay. They wanted to stay in there. Some people really believe in the institution. Like there's still some of them are playing by old rules, right?
Yes. Okay. The old rules in the institution, they broke, right?
Eugene, it's what I call the my honorable friend problem. Those Republicans, they'll say, my honorable friend, the Republican across the aisle. I'm like, some bitch, they sent people to kill you on January 6th, and your honorable friend across there thinks those people are heroes. They're not your friends anymore. This is not the Reagan era of a beer after work or in Hatch and Ted Kennedy working on education together.
Because some of these Democrats still want to believe that there's goodness in everybody. That's true.
It's so crazy to me.
Let me do this real quick. So for those of y'all who hanging with us and love it and appreciate it, if you got a question you want to ask the crew that's on the screen, just drop it in the chat and we'll layer it up and we'll throw it out there in the time that we got left, because I want to make sure this is interactive with my peeps as well. So do that and we'll pull the questions and go from there. So go ahead, make your point.
They still feel like after Trump is over, like they still believe, many of them, that they're going to get back to normal. And I think there is and honestly, that's how Republicans felt in his first term, right? Republicans felt that they were going to get back to the old Republican Party.
Yeah, they did.
That's over.
Michael and I had that discussion many times. Like, well, after 2018, Michael, you and I talked right after 2018. And we were like, well, now that they've been taught such a lesson, obviously the party will come together now.
Right.
I keep pointing out to people, and I have said this in numerous and sundry places. I'm not a historian. I don't play one on TV. But anybody who is thinking that no one in the history of this planet has ever voted themselves out of a dictatorship. It
Correct.
Doesn't work that way. So people who think that they're just we're going to get lucky and Donald Trump is just going to disappear. The man has already said he is running for president again in 2028. I don't care if they got a weekend at Bernie's his ass. That's what they're going to do, right? Unless he is not alive, he will stay in the White House. He's already shown that he'd use violence to do so. So rather than people thinking this naive thing of like, I think, again, strategically, sometimes the Democrats think, hey, we're going to treat the Republicans like the gang that can't shoot straight. They'll hurt themselves. You ain't.
That ain't it, boss.
Wife, I want to make this clear, like, to everybody. I think I said this on Clay Cane's show. You ain't going to get your husband by saying, I'm just going to wait until his boyfriend mistreats him so bad he'll come back to me. That's not how it works.
Right.
Okay, you've got to go out.
That ain't this world. That ain't the world we live in, guys.
Go get your man.
Yes. Like the Democrats have to go get the voters. You can't say, I'm just going to wait until you feel so bad about the person that you're with that you choose me, because I'll just stay home on the couch. And that's what people do. And so that part makes no sense.
100%, Jason.
But then in that situation, what are you getting? Right? What are you waiting for? What do you think is going to come knocking on your door?
The voters. They think the voters are going to come knocking. They think
the thought process is that it's so scary, that Donald Trump is so scary that voters are going to realize on their own, like, oh my God, no mistake, and then pop over here. And that's just not how voters work. What's going to happen is, oh, that's scary. What's happening over here? Oh, gross. And then sit home. Like, that's what's going to happen.
But and Jason, you guys both have exactly the right point. It's like, unless you assert something to the voters as Democrats, unless you go out and talk to them and say, yes, all that stuff sucks, it's crazy, but here's how we're going to fix it. Here's how we're going to make your life better. Here's how we're going to improve everything in the world that you worry about, and talk to them at the level that they're at. Because I've been in focus groups a million times, and it's like, yeah, climate change is really important, but okay, that means I can't drive my car anymore, or that all the fear and the weird shit in their heads. You got to figure out how to talk to them, and you got to do it. You can't just wait and say, this is the guy waiting for the girl to call him for the prom, and she's already there with the captain of the football team.
Right. Right. And here's the thing. It worked for an 80s teen comedy, but the idea is like, you know what? He's going to be a jerk at prom, and then I'll come in and save her. No, dude. No.
This ain't this ain't Pretty in Pink.
No.
So
it's ugly in orange.
Yes.
Ugly in orange. That's it. Orange is the new ugly. What now? So we've got a question from M Philosophy. What's the best way for someone, especially younger folks like myself and my friends, to get involved in helping shape or support Democratic messaging and strategy?
You got to work on campaigns. You got to volunteer. You got to go out there and be in campaigns. That's where the credential and the value of shaping what the party is going to do actually happens. Guys like me started out working at low-level shit in campaigns. My first job as a field director sounds glamorous and everything, but I was putting out yard signs, and I was making sure other people got yard signs to put out and knocking on doors. And that's how you get credibility with candidates and people in power in the party. It's not just it's not like 30,000 foot stuff. You don't come in with a policy paper. You come in with saying, I've worked my ass off. I'm going to do more of it.
And don't just work on campaigns. Work on campaigns of people who you believe in, right? Don't just jump on Nancy Pelosi's campaign, right? She don't need work. If you're someone who wants to shape the Democratic messaging and strategy, if you're someone who believes that it's not working, you need to get into the primaries, right? You need to be someone who is looking like someone who is primarying someone who's been sitting in Congress, not doing a lot. Get on that campaign, because that's where you're going to be able to shape it. That's where the actual change is going to happen.
Yeah. So I have a very good friend who's a podcaster, Pete Dominic, used to be on Sirius XM.
Yeah, I know Pete.
Yeah. And one of the greatest things that I have talked to Pete about over the last 2 years is he got involved. He's actively involved now in local school board elections.
Yes.
And he's been so excited and galvanized by it because they had some crazy MAGA people who were trying to change the textbooks.
Those Moms for Liberty weirdos. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what I always tell people is to combine your points. Eugene's point, somebody that you believe in. Rick's point, somebody at the local level. There is a local state race that's going to have a greater impact on your life than any of the stuff that you see on TikTok or Instagram right now. And that's where you need to go. There is a state senator, there is a member of the school board, there is a county commissioner down there who's actually going to affect your water, going to affect access to abortion clinics, blah, blah, blah. That's where you need to start. And the value of that is you're going to see the results that keep you inspired faster, because that local race that you work on is like, yo, I won with this guy and I see him at Publix, right?
I would layer on one more piece in addition to what you gentlemen are saying, because as a former chairman, I was in the business of doing this. Run your own ass. Go and shake up the system. You want to have a direct, don't worry about someone else's messaging that you're going to do for them. You go out with the message and you have that conversation with the voters, and you put yourself out there and take the risk. I'll share with you what I share with young aspiring candidates. Go into your bathroom, stand in front of the mirror and have a conversation with the person you see. And if you don't like what that person is saying to you, sit your ass on that toilet till you do. Figure it out. Because the moment you walk out that bathroom and you bring that crap to us as voters and the citizens, it's done. Unless you are firm in your leadership, you will get reshaped by everything else outside that bathroom wall.
And there are organizations that Democrats have now that help people run for state office, right? Run for something.
Yeah.
That doesn't even, they don't give a, they maybe care, but they don't really care about the representatives and the members of Congress, the senators, they worry about all these things below that. So you can go to them and be like, look, I'm thinking about running. They have all kinds of, they talk to you about policy. They talk to you like, what does it look like to create a team? What does it look like to create a policy paper? How do you get on Instagram Live and talk? Like, they do all of the things and help people through it. So
we got one from Chan Moran who is asking, is leadership going to listen to the members who are actually fighting, or will there have to be a fight? Now, I think there's a fight that's brewing inside the Republican Party. It's not a raging blaze, but there are, voices that are starting to emerge. We see it a little bit on the big ugly bill. Republicans in the Senate now. How that plays out, we'll ultimately see. But there's noise there. There are grassroots operations like our Republican Legacy, which launched last week, that is starting to, with former members of the House and Senate governorships, et cetera, are coming together to grab back the values and principles of the party to make that case. What kind of fight are we looking at in either party at this point at that level, or is there any oxygen for that?
I think the fight in the Republican Party is over. I mean, I think like there'll be like a little tussle, just a little baby tussle.
Skirmishes here and there.
Yeah, but there's not a bar. The bar fight is over, right? Trump.
Yeah, I think people who were thinking Leonard Leo was going to come out and like start swinging the axe at Donald Trump, he'll play some backroom games, but it's not going to be a broad-based revolutionary kind of like we've got to get past this guy thing.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Jason, what about within the Democratic Party? Will there have to be an actual fight, or how does that work?
So what I think is going to happen, look, Hakeem Jeffries is listening, right? I don't think he's shutting down the people who are fighting better than he is. He is listening. I don't think he's positioning them the way that they need to position. I don't think the Democrats, how they handle the situation with David Hogg is really going to be indicative of how much of an internal fight they're going to have. They need to have a knockdown, drag out, fight. Like they have to have like a Peter and the Chicken street fight for like 3 hours, right? I don't think they're going to do it, but that's what they would need. On the Republican side, I will say this also. I think the fight is over, but what I think is that you have a small number of Republicans who, again, are under the naive impression that the fever is going to pass. And you see that in people like, say, Brian Kemp, right? Brian Kemp thinks he's going to be the John Kasich of 2028. Either Trump's not going to run again and he thinks he can run for president, or he's going to run against him. It's foolish. It's dumb, right? He's letting John Ossoff off the hook. But I think you're going to have a couple of Republicans out there who
take that, by the way.
Right. But the fight's over for Republicans, but you still have some who are delusional, and the Democrats are going to have to figure out if they're going to and I'll say this because we talked about messaging with the first question. David Hogg as some 25-year-old has completely outmaneuvered the entire Democratic Party from messaging standpoint. He is going on shows that they don't go on. David Hogg has been on so many black television shows. I thought he was an extra on Scandal.
What was he doing at the Breakfast Club? Why is it? I couldn't believe it. That was shocking. Yes.
All of these shows that
you go, David. You go.
Show up on unless it's campaign season. And David Hogg is making himself a regular across black spaces, which are the places where you can talk to the core constituency of the Democratic Party, which is how he got his message out long before Kenyatta did. And therefore, that's why nobody was listening to him, even if he was saying logically what David Hogg is saying isn't true. So I say that to say how they handle Hogg. If they let him inside the building and let him sort of shake things up from the inside, then I think their fight works fine. If they don't let him in or they allow him to martyr himself, then they're going to be absolutely ineffective. They will not win the House next year, and then you're going to have a serious fight.
So I got one. Another one from Diane Londeros. Londeros, do you think AOC should replace Schumer?
Look, I would take a guy from a random Waffle House to replace Schumer at this point. Honestly, I mean, I really would. It just the leadership has been. He's great at raising money. But he's not a leader. That doesn't make you a leader. AOC may run for Senate. I doubt it, though. I think she's having more fun in the House, and I think she's got more latitude in the House to have power and position. The Senate has a much more stodgy, old-fashioned kind of approach. I don't think she'd be as happy there. I think somebody needs to replace Schumer, but I don't think she. I think she's got a better future ahead of her out of the Senate than in it.
A, I agree with that. B, I think, I just look at the whole thing with the Senate and I just shake my head. I get the House. I get why Hakeem and the Democratic leadership in the House is hamstrung because that's how the rules are written. There is no play for you if you are number two. In the Senate, that's not the case.
Right.
You had what's his name? Tie up the Senate for 100 and some days. Not Tillis. No.
Tuberville.
Yeah,
Tuberville. Tie up the damn Senate for 100 days. And Chuck Schumer can't stop one nominee from getting through. I don't understand it. I don't understand. You sat there at the knee of Mitch McConnell for all those years watching him use the rules against your ass. And you still couldn't figure out how in the minority, with as close a minority number as you have in the Senate right now, or had in the Senate in the last cycle, that you, with your majority, you could not move the needle. I was talking. They got to figure something out in the Senate side. I don't understand what that will be, but
I was talking to someone recently about AOC and asked them a very similar question to Diane's question, and their point was, if I were her, I would think about running for president and running for Senate in 2026, and then turning right around and running for president in 2028 is not as appetite. I think the way that, Obama got to not have a lot of Senate time that works for a man in a way it doesn't work for a woman. And it's like, you know what I mean? Like the women are held to a different standard. It's going to be all this, like, she's power hungry, blah, blah, blah stuff from Republicans and some Democrats. And so I think a lot of people are hoping that she stays in the House, continues to build up her name ID, which at this damn point might be like 98%.
Right. I was going to say
the Democratic Party. And then runs in the primary, and if not wins in the primary, at least pushes the conversation into a different place.
Yeah. I don't think she should run for the Senate. I'm in agreement there. I think she has a bright future in the House. If I was sitting and talking about this strategically, again, I go back to going to this rally. Unless or until AOC breaks away from Bernie Sanders' class over race argument, she will never be able to have the kind of broad-based appeal that you need to have in order to galvanize voters.
And that's kind of her center too. Is she doesn't have the same. Her and Bernie disagree on that. It seems a little bit.
She does a better job of it, but as long as she is under his umbrella, remember this is the perfect encapsulation of the Democratic Party and what some of their issues are, and they won't have a fight yet, but they've discussed it. A day after, remember, 24 hours after David Hogg is on The Breakfast Club, right? You have Bernie Sanders on with Andrew Schultz, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who is this racist shock, comedian, blah, blah, blah. And you got Bernie on there talking about how DEI is a mistake, blah, blah, blah. That is the problem. And AOC is more strongly associated with the Bernie side of that conversation than the David Hogg side of that conversation.
Right.
And as long as that's the case, you're not going to be anything bigger than the most powerful, well-known congressperson out of your district. You got to have a much wider, broad-based appeal. I don't think she has it yet.
I just want to, before as we wind down, I just want to put a big pin in the whole DEI thing. Y'all out there screaming about DEI, that's how your grandmama and your granddaddy got started, right? Because the country recognized it needed the diversity they brought. They wanted to create equitable opportunities for them, and they wanted to include them in the conversation. So why that bitch so hard to do now? I don't understand. So y'all need to explain that shit to me. I don't understand it. So folks, we are at our time, and I am touched and very happy with this conversation, because I had to have it with a sister, April Ryan, and some brothers I love, Eugene Daniels, Rick Wilson, Jason Johnson. Really appreciate you guys taking a moment as we transition to a new art form, as they say, TV. I've been doing it for a while, but I hadn't been a host before. So,
well, congratulations, Michael. You deserve it. It's going to be, and I think the show is going to have a bunch of voices that people need to hear. And I think I could not be more happy for you.
Well, I'm excited, and all y'all gonna be in there. Yeah, Eugene, we get you coming in, because Eugene, my standby, my brother covers me, and I cover for him. So, but it's a real treat to have you guys here. I want to thank everybody for joining the live stream today, and for all those who have listened to the podcast over the years. We have one more live stream episode happening next Tuesday, June 10th at 10:30 a.m. Eastern, with a brand new lineup of fantastic guests taking place on the Bulwark's YouTube page. So if you like this episode, please share it with a friend. You can find me on X and Blue Sky at Michael Steele, and on Threads and Instagram at Chairman_Steele. You can also catch me on the weeknight, Mondays through Friday. Hey, in the house, 7 p.m. Eastern on MSNBC. Until next time, y'all, be safe, be well, and remember what I always tell you: stop playing with stupid.
So,
see you guys.
A couple things. We're not